Tell. Oh, broadcast is live, it says.
Broadcast is live, Gary Payne.
Hey,
Good afternoon. My name is Ruben Valenzuela. I'm the Artistic Director of Bach Collegium San Diego. And you're joining us today for our third interview. This has been an ongoing interview series. A couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago now, we had Adam Lamont, who serves as our concertmaster. And last week we had bass baritone Paul Max Tipton. It was great to talk to him. He's out in Boston. And this week, they're always on Wednesdays, typically. We're fortunate to have Gary Payne, who serves as BCSD's board president, among other things. We'll unpack that in a bit. He tends to have many interests, and I'll let him say something about that in just a second. Gary, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good to see you virtually. We've seen each other on a few of these calls, Zoom calls and things like that. So
yeah.
I feel like I know a little bit about what you're going through, but it's been weird times. I just looked back at my calendar, and wasn't the last time I was out, but it was the last time I had a photo shoot, and it was March 10th. So it's almost been 2 weeks. So that was kind of the week, I think, that everything just sort of collapsed and closed, and yeah.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, that's pretty much. Since we're both in San Diego, yeah, for me, I think March 8th was the last official out in public gathering that I took part in, and then everything just sort of folded from there.
Yeah.
And probably same with you. You probably, or I certainly didn't think that just around the corner we'd be looking at in an indefinite period of time. I think it was hard to kind of have that sense at that point.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, when I think back to those last few things that I did, I had a couple shoots right in a row for San Diego Home and Garden magazine, and I think we were aware of things going on. That was probably part of half of the conversation. But
yeah,
to think how normal that seems so only a couple months ago is just weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, how are you doing now, all these weeks later? How is life on your end?
We're doing okay. I mean, I think I've thought of it as like part of it seems like a forced vacation. Nice. But then every once in a while you feel like it's a forced vacation that may never end. And you just don't know when it's ever going to get back to reality. So it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day. But, trying to make the best of it. I mean, again, I definitely think there's some silver linings in how we've learned to live our lives differently, to be inside, to be with our family, if we have that opportunity. So, all that's pretty good. I've taken a million walks around my neighborhood to try to get a little exercise and listen to a lot of podcasts and books on tape and things like that. And been trying to, challenging myself to play a little music myself and record it to in part to challenge my video skills as well as musical skills. So anyways, I'm I feel like that illusion might break at some moment, and I might get a little depressed if I think about it too hard.
Right.
But for the most part, it hasn't been too bad.
Yeah, I find that the old adage of take one day at a time, which sounds on some levels rather simplistic and somewhat trite, actually is helping me keep saying on my end that it's just, the ground seems to be shifting literally day to day and sometimes hour to hour, depending on what you hear on the news or don't hear on the news and what people are posting. And so I'm just like, okay, this is today and we'll deal with tomorrow when it comes.
Yeah. Hey, here's a behind the scenes question. My wife just asked, how does she see this? Through Facebook?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, and we're also broadcasting on YouTube at the same time. And
so you go to Facebook's page?
Go to Facebook's page. Yeah. And then another viewer asked, are we aware of the fact that there's this beautiful photo of Heather Vorick, our cellist, on the screen? And that's very intentional because we're going to get to your photography in just a minute. And we both thought it would be really good to start the interview with one of your favorite photographs up, because that will stir some conversation, no doubt, in just a moment. Well, speaking of photographs, why don't we get to that? Before I ask you the question, many of us who regularly play with BCSD, are involved directly in the concerts, and or audience members see you all the time. You're there floating about the room, you know, that the presence is very much there. And then, you know, a few hours later, literally you have the fastest turnaround of any photographer that I've ever seen. Within a few hours, there are these amazing photographs that appear on social media. And then what's always fun to watch is everybody's profile picture changes almost simultaneously in a matter of minutes because of their photographs. But before we get to that part of it, can you tell us what was your path to photography and making that a career?
Yeah, I mean, I think of my starting photography a little bit late. One might compare this to a musician because it was kind of more late teens. I mean, I wasn't taking pictures for the school newspaper in high school. It was kind of those late teens that I got into photography a bit, and mainly when I was traveling, and then when I started college, I actually first went to Grossmont Junior College here in San Diego, and they had a really good photography program there, and so that's where I learned some of my basic skills. But then I actually went on to University of San Diego and I have my degree in business there. And then I was interested in graphic design and actually went to a graphic design school that was located here in San Diego. And so photography was still kind of a part of that picture, but I was particularly interested in graphic design and graduated there and worked as a graphic designer for a few years. Here locally, actually, the main job I had was at Food Maker, which is the parent company of Jack in a Box. So I was making 9-cent tacos and things like, or taco posters, I should say. This was all kind of pre-computer. I remember fairly shortly before I left there, we had ordered some big Mac computers at the time, and they were still in the box after like 2 months because nobody knew really what to do with them. But during that time, working as a graphic designer, I went back to school, actually back at Grossmont College, and started taking some night classes in photography again, and 4x5 photography and various processing, color photography. And anyways, so I think I was thinking, okay, this is going to be my side art thing. But then after a few years of doing that, I realized it was really what I wanted to try to pursue professionally. And remember, I kind of went to some photographers that we had worked with, some of my teachers, and also photographers that we had worked with through Jack in a Box, and kind of showed them sort of things I was doing, which was mostly kind of street photography and things like that. And just asked, does this fit into the world of photography somewhere where I could make a career? And that's sort of what led me towards photojournalism. Okay. This is fairly long story, but I then moved from San Diego to Seattle. One of my sisters lived in Seattle, and I'd been thinking about it for some time. And that was kind of my transition from graphic design to photography. Took specifically some courses in photojournalism up there, and then started working for some tiny, weekly, bi-weekly newspapers in the Seattle area, and eventually worked my way up to what was basically a group of daily papers in the area. There was about 5 or 6 owned by the same company throughout kind of the King County area of Seattle. And I ended up just moving between all those different newspapers for a couple of years, gaining lots of experience. And the great thing about newspaper photography is it's so broad. You could be photographing some CEO of a company one moment, and then the next there's a car crash, and then next there's some a food shoot, and then a model shoot, and then some protest on the street. So it was really fun in that sense, and being part of the group of those folks was really fun. So that's really kind of what got me into, I guess, the beginning of a career in photography.
I was going to ask you also, in fact, I should have mentioned to you, Gary, at the top of the interview that I've opened up the interview to some questions from people, and some questions are being submitted right now. And so as they come in, and if I find the questions compelling, I'll just ask away, and you can answer. So the first question is from someone we know very well, and that's Amy Wang, one of our musicians with BCSD.
Uh-oh.
I was right. Yeah. And her question is, when did Gary become fluent in Spanish? Not when he started speaking it, but when did he master Spanish?
Well, thanks for that question, Amy. So yeah, I mean, as my photography story goes on a little bit longer, so Spanish I was interested in the high school, and after high school I took classes and went to some kind of Spanish language institutes here in San Diego, which was really fun. But it wasn't really till as my photography career progressed in Seattle, I got involved with basically an international photo news agency at the time called Gamma Liaison. And they were based in New York and actually in Paris, but they were interested in me covering stuff in the Northwest, which I did for quite a while for them. And then I wanted to go abroad somewhere, and at that point spoke fairly good Spanish. And their photographer in Mexico City had stopped contributing, and so they asked me to go there. It's kind of a mutual, they're an agency, they represent you. I wasn't getting a salary. They sold my stories, and then we shared the proceeds, so to speak. And then you'd also deal with assignments. So say if Newsweek needed somebody in Mexico City, or later I moved to Buenos Aires, it would come through them. But anyway, so I moved to Mexico, and that of course is the short answer of why I speak Spanish well. I was there in Mexico City for about a year and a half, and then actually met my wife in Mexico on the beach in Acapulco.
That'll fine tune the Spanish skills pretty fast.
Yeah. So I eventually I was in Mexico City for about a year and a half, and then moved to for the same agency, moved to Buenos Aires, and I was there for about 3.5 years. So I was in Latin America for about five years, and my girlfriend, fiance, and then wife spoke Spanish, and we continue to this day to speak kind of half and half, and she's always spoken to the kids in Spanish. And anyways, that's the main reason.
Yeah. As we sort of turn our attention to some of the photographs, and again, if you're just joining us and you're wondering why there's a photo of Heather Vorick, our cellist, I mean, we're going to feature some of Gary's. I asked him actually to submit some of his favorite photos, and so we'll go through those in just a minute, and maybe we can talk about them. But one of the things that I have found, so Gary, we were saying, and I'll say again, for those that don't know, I think I remember meeting you for the first time around 2012, 13. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I think it was through our mutual colleague, Chris Aquavella. Am I correct in that?
Somewhere along those lines. I can't even believe it that we actually, Chris, who was my mandolin teacher, for a project that he had with his students, which I was one of, he wanted us to kind of create and record something with somebody else, and somehow you came up, and we did this feels like another world.
Yes,
we did this Scarlatti piece that was theoretically written for mandolin and continuo, and you did it on my little harpsichord thing here, and that's so weird. That really feels like
that feels like a decade ago. Yeah, another world away.
Yeah,
and then at some point. Well, actually, in my mind, and I could be wrong, I sort of remember that the first concert, you were just there as a concert goer, audience member, that you came to was something that we did in the History Center. Now, I could be wrong, and this would have been around 2013. We were doing a program of Italian music, and I remember you saying to me, "Hey, do you mind if I take some photographs? Is that cool?" And I'm like, well, yeah, because from my perspective, it's one of those things where we'd come up to a concert and you're thinking about the music end of things, and I'd be like, gosh, it would be wonderful if we could just somebody take some photos on their camera or their cell phone. And of course, technology in 2013 isn't even what it is now. And I remember, I'll take some photos. And of course, I had no idea. I really didn't know your technical prowess when it came to photography. And I remember you sent me these I was like, oh my gosh, this is like world-class photography here. He just captured, not only did he take photos, but he took he captured the essence of the event in images. And those images have become so powerful that I've mentioned this to you, even my parents, who are not even regularly on social media, will say to me, "Oh, las fotos de Gary Payne." They know that there's this guy Gary Payne, and he takes these amazing, beautiful photographs, and they've come to know you through those photographs. When you come and take photographs, what are you looking for? Is there a specific agenda you have, or you just kind of let the sort of vibe go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I approach it as kind of my training in photojournalism, and so in some ways, I think I approach it like a lot of other professional photojournalists would do. So I in some ways don't think it is that special, within the profession, but you do realize over time that you create a style and an intimacy, and of course I know about music, which I think is helpful, and but it's especially in rehearsals, because then I can really walk around and do whatever I want, and as soon as it can almost happen with any subject. As soon as you have somebody's confidence that you can kind of do whatever you want as a photographer and get wherever you want, there's just so many good photos to be had. They're all there. And sometimes the lighting might be particularly good, or sometimes the framing might be particularly good of a given place. But all the photos are there because people they're doing something interesting already, which is playing music. They're emoting, so there's opportunities for that. And then there's of course all these opportunities of funny things, of focusing on details that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And those are kind of just, those are just a running list in my head of things that how I would approach anything. If I had that kind of freedom to photograph something, I would just be constantly looking for those little details and emotions and framing.
And I think because you're taking photographs of musicians in this case, as Maury Baker, Maury, he's our wonderful timpanist. He's made a comment that he finds that your photos capture it's like you're able to go inside and see someone's soul. You literally can look right through them. And I can just think of many photographs, some of which we'll go through in a minute, where that is exactly what I find to be so powerful. And like many wonderful photographs that you've taken, and photographs of like well-known, throughout history, photographers, that when I see a photograph that you've taken, oftentimes I can literally remember what I was feeling in that moment. Sometimes even what I was, the music, what I was feeling, what I was smelling, the vibe in the room. There's some way that you're just magically able to capture a little slice of life in that instant that I think is very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's obviously a nice way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it does feel, it's interesting, and I think I've created a little bit of this routine with BCSD and with other concerts that I photograph, that I come in kind of stealthily and do my thing, and I might not have said a word to anybody the whole time, yet I feel like I'm capturing very intimate moments of individuals along the way. And I think in some ways I'm always trying to capture that fleeting moment of honesty or emotion or something that they're feeling. I mean, again, sometimes I'm looking for something funny or quirky, but or what I sometimes describe as just the beauty of somebody kind of in their, I think sometimes I've realized over the years that people maybe ask me after the fact to like take down a photo because God, that looks old, or like whatever, and probably a lot more people might think that but never actually say it, and so I realize sometimes I'm finding something poetic that they might not like to see about themselves, or is not as beautiful aesthetically from their perspective, but I get caught up in sort of the power of the image, of the moment captured.
Yeah. Here's another question I think will be interesting. What is the craziest concert or event you've ever been asked to photograph?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I think of this offhand, but I was so there's something called Safari Club International, which is basically a hunting thing, and I actually know some people that have been very involved with that for years. Family, friends, great folks, and one of them was one of my dad's associates for many years in the restaurant business, and he became president of the club. It's kind of like a rotating thing, but we're talking thousands of people. They have a huge event every year in Vegas or somewhere in Nevada, where probably 50,000 people come, kind of thing, from around the world. And anyway, so he rotated in as the president and asked me to be one of the photographers. And because they were going to have, in part because they were going to have the president of Argentina, the former president of Argentina, Menem, who was the president of Argentina when I was in Argentina, and also President Bush. I think Dan Quayle was there, Schwarzkopf, all the kind of the who's of sort of the conservative movement. So that was, that was fun and interesting because it wasn't my world. And I've told this little tale a few times, but George Bush Sr., he and I share the same birth date.
Oh.
So one moment that I was kind of assigned to photograph him while his time was there, and as we were walking down a hallway together, kind of all together, moving from one place to another, I turned to him and said, hey, Mr. President, I don't know what I said. We share the same birth date, something like that. And he said, I don't remember his age at the time, but he says, well, you don't look 76 or something like that. Good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, that's one that occurs to me.
Yeah. Here's a funny story. Well, you know this, I've mentioned this to you before, but when we have, under normal circumstances, when BCSD has a weekend of concerts, we start our rehearsals on a Tuesday night, and we rehearse Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we typically have our sort of, quote unquote dress on Thursday. And there's kind of like a routine that's set up where, oh yeah, Gary's going to come on a certain day and do some photographs. And dear Paul Max Tipton, and I joked with him last week about this, that he anticipated your arrival to take photos, and he just got all gussied up, got to get a tie on and a beautiful sweater on and the whole thing, and then you didn't show up that particular day. There was something in the schedule, and I just remember he being so disappointed that he was all ready for you, and alas, I think you came the next day or something, and he was back in sweats and a t-shirt.
I do feel bad about that a little bit, or I used to feel more bad about it, that I would just and wouldn't give people an opportunity, because there's a pretty big difference between how people gussy themselves up for the concert versus rehearsal, and I hate to think I make few people feel uncomfortable because of that, and sometimes feel a little bad. But if I get a good photo, then I don't really care that much.
Yeah. Just so you know, knowing that you could come at any time, I usually try. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try to be ready for photos at any given moment. Whenever Gary shows up, he shows up, and we go from there. Yeah. But again, it's like you take these photos, and it's in within hours there are these photos that you post, and I don't know if you're aware of the fact, but the community building that takes place when the group of musicians that are in this room for that week, and then you capture these intimate moments of rehearsal. There's this bonding thing that I have found that happens over these photographs, and that is just exponentially builds and builds and builds over time, and it has created a look for BCSD that we're absolutely fortunate to have. I mean, there is absolutely no way that we could afford a professional photographer to come and do photo sessions like this every time we have an event. So we are ever grateful to you for that. But then to see everybody convert their profile picture literally within minutes of that, there's my new photo, and there's my new photo, and there's my new photo, and it's like, yep, Gary Payne is at it again.
It's nice. I mean, that has been rewarding on its own. I mean, it's a little bit broader about social media in general for a photographer, but as a photographer that has always basically been published, working from newspapers to news magazines and everything else. A lot of that being distant, so you got published and you saw it yourself, and maybe a colleague said something about it, but that was kind of a reward in itself. And social media is a little bit like that. I now have an Instagram account, which I didn't earlier, but even through Facebook, it's really nice to kind of have that sense of being able to publish, and then particularly on Facebook to get kind of feedback, and
right.
BCSD has always been, all the musicians have always been so nice about that. And Amy, who wrote the question, she's always been so good about responding and commenting on photos and things like that I've always very much appreciated. So it is a nice kind of feedback loop, and that's part of the reason why I want to get photos out quickly, because I know at this point there becomes an expectation that photos will come out.
Right.
I even find myself probably censoring every once in a while, going, oh, well, that's not the greatest photo of Heather or whatever. Maybe I won't put that one now. That's been fun. And it's funny that sometimes I photographed other groups. Like I was trying to make headway into, with San Diego Opera, but also with San Diego Ballet and a few other dance groups and stuff like that, which I was really enjoying doing that photography as well. But maybe it's partly some of those people are younger and not, we know Facebook has become a little bit of the old man's or old things. But I would never quite get the feedback that I've come to expect with BCSD, even though I thought the photos were really good. So again, I really appreciate how it's always worked out in BCSD.
And incidentally, I think you tap on something that to be perfectly honest, and I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, that there is one of the things that I value the most about BCSD is this, when we are, in rehearsal and or concerts, we absolutely are, as professional as we can be, and taking what we're doing very seriously. But I think we know how to have fun, and we know we love each other's company in the casual sense. And I think these photographs and how they circulate through social media channels and how people comment. I mean, with Facebook memories, we all get them every day. I think it's very rare that a Facebook memory comes by and there isn't a Gary Payne photo there. That reminds me of are you serious? It's already been 5 years since we did, X piece. Gosh, time is flying. So I just for me personally, I can't thank you enough for the wonderful images that you have created, like timestamps of the organization and its path through San Diego here, and it's what we do here. Another interesting question. So actually, what I want to do now is I want to go through these photos. So for those of you who missed me saying this earlier on, I asked Gary to send some of his favorite BCSD photos, and so I'm gonna. Hopefully this will all work, and I will do the technology well here. But I can go to, okay, let's see how this is all going to work. Here we go. Oh, did I just make it go away?
Yep.
Okay. So here, Gary, why don't you vamp while I do this?
Ruben asked to do favorites, and wow, I realized how hard that was over the last 6 or 7 years. And I tried to come up with some photos that I thought that I still remembered taking, or that were particularly successful, I thought. But ultimately, it was really hard. I mean, I could have just done photos from the last concert, and those would have been favorites as well. But I kind of think early on, what I remember, Ruben, as the first concert that I think I took pictures at was actually at the library in Encinitas. And the countertenor Charles.
Charles Humphreys. Exactly.
And I think that might have been the first one I took pictures of. And I looked back. That was February of 2013.
Okay.
I think that was the earliest ones I could find. And I think I'd maybe gone to 1 or 2 concerts before that. Guys.
Right. Okay. I actually had forgotten about that event, but now it's all coming back. Heather was there. Charles was singing. Yeah. I was playing. Pierre Joubert was playing. And there may have been somebody else, but it was,
I'm forgetting her name. The bassoonist that we.
Sally Jackson was playing.
I was there.
Yeah.
I was just
yeah, we were definitely there doing BCSD evangelism at the Encinitas Library, trying to get the word out. All right, so here are the photos, and we can talk a little bit about each one of them, and hopefully we can get through all of these. So here's a beautiful photo of Heather Vorick. Let me just say really quick from my perspective that one of the biggest just most important things that have happened in the history of this organization has been when Heather moved to San Diego. Prior to Heather's arrival in San Diego, there was really no cellist or Baroque cellist or continuo cellist here living at that point. There are others now at this point, and I'm ever grateful for that. Most notably, Alex Greenbaum. And I know Kate Hatmaker is watching, I think, or she was watching, so we're lucky to have him. But when Heather arrived around 2012, 2013, that was a game changer. So you want to say something about this photograph?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say specific things if I come across photos that I think there are things to say about. But Heather's just been, the poor thing. I've probably photographed her maybe more than anybody. Maybe you would be the first. But she just always makes a good photo, if you will. And I feel like some of the earlier ones, I also remember there might be one of those in here of down at the church downtown where you guys would do the Bach at noon. Yeah. I remember getting some nice ones of her there. A girl and her cello it's hard to go too wrong. And so
it's hard to beat. Yeah.
And I think photographically, I see that combination, and then I just know that there are good photos there, and it might not be easy necessarily to get to, but with time and you find the right angle, and and everybody, I'm thinking of this out loud a little bit, but everybody, depending on the instrument they play or if they sing, there are, not that I have it categorized, but it's a little more intuitive of like, okay, this angle works for this instrument or that angle, or if somebody's singing, it's hard to get them looking like they're performing, but they're also relaxed and natural. Right. Everybody offers their own little challenges.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's see what happens here. We're going to click. Oh, look at there. There's another.
Yeah, that was another earlier one, and that was at that church downtown.
Yeah. And my. Yeah. That was a long time ago. To me, it feels like a long time ago. And usually I can date the photos by the glasses that I'm wearing. I haven't seen that pair of glasses in probably at least 7 years, maybe 6 years.
Yeah. And so there's the date 5/16/13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But and I was, this was kind of the coloration was kind of my thing in the beginning. I mean, I love black and white. I love kind of these monochrome, but, part of it's out of a lot of these situations that the lighting necessarily wasn't that good. Maybe during a rehearsal, but even during a concert. And so actually kind of the black and white or this sort of monochrome kind of neutralizes that as a bad issue and makes what might not be that interesting of a photo a more interesting photo. Every few weeks when these photos somehow reach my parents, they happen to log on to whatever and they see it. My mom, and she, in her mind, photos only exist in hard copy, right? And so she's like, oh, can you please somehow get that one to me? I want to have it. So anyway, this may have been one of them at some point, but here's a fun one of Adam Lamott. That wasn't too long ago. For Messiah in 2018, it looks like. I've always, Adam's playing up for me, and I appreciate that. But I always enjoy those lighter moments, too, and people relaxing and laughing, and because I think that brings out a lot of the real personality. Particularly I think with classical music, there's such a separation between the audience and the players that. It's really rewarding to bring some of that fun out and some of that personality out of the players to sort of represent that to the broader public.
Right, but the juxtaposition of Adam looking so silly and playing to you, and then you've got somebody who's taking their job very seriously, like Amy Wang over there in the background.
Yeah, well, Amy's always been a challenge to get smiling. Yeah. I don't know if I have it in this group, but I always felt fairly successful when I actually got her a lighter moment.
Now,
this is
one of my favorite photos of all time. This one right here.
There's a few in this series. I think this is the only one there's one where you're kind of in there too in the shadow. But this is at St. James, and just playing off the, this was basically, I guess, the mic check or the sound check ahead of time, and of course the sun's setting back there, so the sun's rushing in, and it just made interesting photographic opportunities.
Yeah, this is, for those that don't know, this is Reggie Mobley, who around that time, 13, 14, 15, 16, he was here quite regularly. His schedule is such impacted these days that it's hard to get him out to San Diego, but we will get him back, hopefully in the not too distant future. But this is a photo that I have always loved, because it's just, again, there's a story there that is so powerful. Here's anyway.
This looks like a rat pack. That's what I
love this photo. Yeah, I love this photo. Well, I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, I remember it specifically. I can almost smell the moment we were there. It was just before Messiah in Rancho Santa Fe, Church of the Nativity, and we were getting ready to go on. And you captured this photo of it's Michael Sponseller on my left and Daniel Zulag on my right, and those two guys are like at the very, pillars of what we've been able to do with BCSD. And I was shortly after I got married, and they had been groomsmen at the wedding, and I don't know, it just captures the camaraderie and the spirit there. Yeah. So, let's see here. Oh my.
Yeah. So that was a concert. And I've caught you guys a few times backstage showing your relationship, I should say. And I just like this. I love seeing kind of Anne-Marie's hand on your back there. It sort of tells the story.
Yeah, and you'll know that around that time also she was doing some administrative things with BCSD, and so she was probably saying something like, "Oh, okay, these tickets have been sold, or don't worry about it. It's late now. Just do the music."
Yeah, right.
Something like that. Oh, this is a great one. This is a great one. Again,
not that long ago. Just a fun pre-concert moment. So
yeah, with Andrea Zamarodian and Gabby.
I love this one because it seems so sweet. I mean, here it's basically the guys that are at the top of the company, helping them put on their cuffs. I thought it was really sweet.
Yeah. The other thing funny about this photo is that I think it was one of those occasions when Daniel forgot. He was already traveling long distance. He forgot to pack a bow tie. And so it so happened that I had two bow ties. And so I not only was he wearing my bow tie, but then he needed help with his cufflinks. So there was a lot going on. A lot going on. Yeah. Yes.
So I know they're not really sleeping. They're just deeply listening to the music. But this is, they were up. This was also Messiah at the Greek church, and they're up in the balcony there waiting their time because they're going to play from the back of the church. But I kind of love these moments like this. The people with horns have a lot of waiting around sometimes.
Yeah, and here's another wonderful thing about this. See, this is something that under normal circumstances I would never see.
Yeah,
I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know how they get up there. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, I hope they're up there. I think they know to be up there. I mean, they've done it a million times, but there's always this it's something I can see that I don't normally get to see. Is always interesting.
Yeah.
I love this photo. This is a cool angle that you when we were doing the Martin Mass, and me trying to look taller, I guess, on my tiptoes is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It's helping you. You go up on your tiptoes. That was not that long ago too. I just thought it was a cute moment of a very genuine laugh. I think you called her out on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another part that's fun about the photographs that you take is that oftentimes my recollection of the moment or the moment where you were around is that I was probably under some musical stress. I was running out of time. Something wasn't going as well as that it should be going, and I can feel the clock just kind of running out on me. and I feel stressed, and I feel like there's stress in the room. And then I see your photos, and people are cracking up and they're smiling, and I'm thinking, gosh, like maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Oh, that's great.
That sometimes happens, but let's see what's around the corner here. Yes.
Oh yeah, they just funny. They had all gone out and got mani-pedis. We don't have to read who they are, but I just thought it was a funny photo.
Yeah. Oh my.
Yeah, there was a lot from this one where you're very expressive. So you are singing for the whole choir there, I think.
It was so the program was the Lilith Te Deum we were doing, and I think of all the concerts that we've done in the last in some time now, this was one of the larger ensembles we've done, and it just was like on high octane from the beginning to the end, just the way the music is written, and it was a fun day. Yeah. And I guess I was just sort of losing myself in the moment, I suppose. There's Reggie again.
Yeah. It looks like he saw me, so I thought that was kind of fun. And it's just playing, with framing of, especially when it comes down to a live concert, your ability to move around becomes very limited. So using sort of tricks, quote unquote, like this, where you get something peeking in through natural framing, sometimes the only way to make certain things interesting. So.
Right, and there's one I think I saw. Oh yeah, this is a really good Maury Baker one with his trumpet section.
I'm pretty sure he didn't fall asleep. I mean, that's the joke of why I took it. Of course, he's just tuning his drum, but I kind of love those moments that.
Yeah, and Maury is watching the interview now, so he'll get a good chuckle.
Actually, there's another kind of fairly recent one I took of Maury where it's in rehearsal. It's at your church. And he's got, I think, his Bach, some sort of Bach shirt on, and he's just looking so cool. Yeah. And we all know how cool Maury is. I felt like I showed it somewhere else, and I said, this guy is as cool as he looks. And I couldn't find it right now, but it was a really fun photo.
Maury is one of those coolest advertised. And we're in a couple of weeks. I don't remember the exact date, but Maury Baker is definitely on the agenda for an interview.
Oh, great one!
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. We're going to go back into his deep, dark past, see what's there. Oh yes, Michael Sponseller.
Yeah, so I also consider it sometimes a challenge to try to get Michael in a particularly like this, because not that he's not that he doesn't joke around and smile and stuff like that, but he's hard to catch in those moments. And so I just included that one because I like that, and I feel like I've gotten other musicians in just those really unguarded moments that sort of shows their personality.
Yeah, that may have been like one of two times that he smiled that day, and you captured, which is this is a really great one of Aaron Westman, and over the years, I think some of my favorite photos have been actually of Aaron Westman.
I initially in a few. This might be the only one that made this last cut, and this was fairly recent. But yes, I felt like I've gotten a decent series of photos of Aaron over the years, from way back in the beginning too. This was also recent, but just a nice behind the scenes moment of Aaron waiting for him to be called.
Oh yes.
This was, I was asking you last night, I think, what was that concert? Because I just remember there was some fun photos and good behind the scenes stuff of everybody getting ready.
And the thing, what's awesome about this photo also is the fact that, Reggie's t-shirt kind of tells you the moment in time that we were in, right. Current events of that particular time. Yes, Molly.
That same concert, and Molly is such an amazing singer and a beautiful woman. And I just, there's a few photos from this series, but I just love that intensity that she's holding the gate. Actually, who's in the foreground here? I'm not positive.
Gosh, I
don't remember for sure.
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Anyways, just thought that was nice. And she's anyways, she's So, we did this whole series. I realized we did it 2 different times, maybe in 2 different consecutive years, that I brought a big white seamless background and just photographed everybody, and took like 30 seconds, maybe a minute with each person, but it was kind of fun to, I sort of like this style about against the white background, because it's just like, you're just forced to, the person are just forced to kind of give some of their personality out. They're not hiding behind what they're doing. They're just stuck in front of the camera. So it's sort of almost uncomfortable, but I always think it's kind of revealing too. Of course, Stephanie played it up quite well. So
Stephanie is a good spirit. We love Stephanie Moore. This is one of my favorites. This shot that series that you did, whenever this, maybe 2016 thereabouts.
Right.
But again, it just shows, to me, it feels like family, it's like a family together doing the thing. And one of that series, the one that I like the most is Daniel Zuluaga. He just looks like so smug holding his Orbo.
Like he's holding a pitchfork or something.
Like, I dare you. I dare you. Misha's very intense. And we usually bring him out to be intense, whether it's Pilot or Lucifer, whatever the case may be. He is that guy. This is a fun one.
I always think this one. I always remember this one, and I always feel like it needs to have a caption contest. It's like, like Michael saying, "Have you ever thought of putting a banana in the score?"
That's a good one. That's a good one, and I remember the occasion, as a matter of fact. So we just have a few more to go here. Interesting angle.
Yeah, fairly, and that's Andrew McIntosh, I believe. But again, sometimes I feel like I've now done this for so many years. I try not to repeat myself, except some of the good photos are still the good photos to get. But sometimes a different angle might be interesting. So that felt like that was kind of a successful angle that, of course, in most cases, especially if it was a concert, you never could get. He's not fair to David here, but I always thought this was pretty funny, because I think when it originally got put up, somebody put nanu of which I thought was funny. Well, I love finding those moments too.
Let's see how many people know the nanu reference.
So this is the triptych of those ones, but this is early on, and this is back at Rancho Santa Fe, and I it's a great. I always think the first one is you saying, "Eat the apple."
Eat the apple.
Eat the apple, but it's a great kind of intense triptych.
Right. Well, before we wrap up, I was gonna also ask you about the bathroom series that you do. Because a lot of people have, if you're on Instagram or is it only on Instagram that you post these?
Over the years I've been filtering or putting them out through Facebook, but I actually think it was my son who's gotten into social media more, and it was kind of part of his encouragement of making a separate channel for that stuff. I think it's a little hard to explain, but so I do a lot of architecture photography too. That's commercially and also for magazines. And so I have and then my graphic design background, I also just really like graphic things, straight lines and how things, if captured in a certain way, create a design. And so the bathroom series, mostly it happens when I'm traveling, and it's funny. It's like, and when you're traveling, presumably like I do these days, which is usually with family or my wife or something like that, the only time that I'm really actually by myself is when I go off and go to the bathroom. and for some reason, there's something slightly inspirational about that. And that I've, I guess two things. One, half the population, for the most part, females, don't ever actually get to see what happens in a man's bathroom and what it looks like.
Right.
And that I think a lot of people don't really even notice. I've found, and a lot of this sort of design, if you will, in bathrooms is sort of perfunctory. It's like, okay, this works, and you don't think there's a whole lot of design sense gone into most bathrooms, but I sometimes find the symmetry or lack of that symmetry or juxtaposition kind of interesting. So I've mostly just with my iPhone over the years, when I found myself in an interesting bathroom, of just taking a picture of it. and so I recently started an Instagram, account of that stuff.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point that I have to confess to you that whenever I go to the bathroom, that I walk in and I see bathrooms in a different way. Like, would Gary Payne be inclined to photograph one? Is this up? Is interesting? Yeah.
I get a number of unsolicited folks, friends of mine, sending me bathrooms. Hey, thought of you. What do you think of this bathroom?
Yeah.
So that's really cute.
Yeah. Well, before we're out of time, and technically speaking, we are out of time, but that's okay. We're going to just couple more things, and then we'll wrap up here. Sure. One of the things that I appreciate about you is the fact that in our generation and in our day, we find that people specialize in things. They find one thing that they're interested in doing, and then they just pursue that. And obviously, you are a world-class photographer. But what I love about you is the fact that you're, like the old term, the Renaissance man, where you play mandolin. You obviously do the photography. You do martial arts. You play the violin. And there's probably a million other things that I'm not aware of. Like, were you always like that as a kid, where you just wanted to learn how to do everything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of that more, college on, where I maybe felt a little more conscious of, like, I was doing had interest in a lot of different things and doing them, one of the things I think I've said to, maybe passing on to my kids a little bit, is that, if you have a variety of interests and an interest that you've developed to a certain degree of proficiency, you can keep moving through the rest of your life, and you can go back to things like if some channel's not working out, or if you've come to your, your natural limits in something, you can go back to this other thing, and as long as you haven't let it go too far, it's there for you to nurture once again. So I mean, I think of. Certainly think of music that way, and what feels very the opposite of music is martial arts, and they feel like they use very different parts of my brain and creativity, and it feels very nice to be able to go from one to the other and feel like that you're not starting from zero. I think a lot of people have started so many things over the years, but never really followed through to the point where they could, like, go back to it. And so I think I've always considered that valuable. And as you know, and some people know, I'm doing my master's now at San Diego State, and in Homeland Security, which I know is out of the blue for a lot of people. But that's also been very interesting to me. International relationships and conflicts and security and self-defense and all those things have been interesting. And I kind of stumbled into this program. And so, I've been back to school for the last year and a half. And that's been really interesting, really rewarding. Don't know exactly where it's going to lead me. Don't know if I'll find a way to combine some of my photography. And I think in certain ways I will. Not looking to hang up my camera. So anyways, who knows? But yeah, I guess that's another example.
Well, that's, it's all very refreshing, because like I said, I think we're sort of like the way society conditions people to, find like one or two things that you're good at and try to get good at those. And this idea of being, well and robustly grounded in a number of things is a concept, I think, that was, pretty standard fare, centuries ago, but certainly these days, I would never be brave enough to try to get, even like play a scale on a violin in public, God forbid. Exactly. Yeah. I would make that face and I would make it again. Last thing, Gary, I personally, from myself, I can't thank you enough for what you have done in 7 or 8 years, starting with just coming to a concert, taking photographs of the concert, your work as board president of BCSD, your support all these years. It has not only been impactful, but meaningful to me. And I can comfortably say, from the vantage point of all the musicians who come and are part of BCSD, they feel the same way. So I thank you very much for that.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, and I really, really appreciate it, and feel like I'm part of a big family with BCSD, and it's been very rewarding rewarding for me too. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. And if you're watching this interview and you stumbled on it for the first time, this was the third in a series of an ongoing interview series. And next week, I believe next week is Heather Vorick, as a matter of fact. And I think not at 1 o'clock, but at 2 o'clock is when that interview will take place. And then we will wrap back to Maury Baker. You don't want to miss Maury Baker. That'll be a hot ticket on that day. So again, thanks for tuning in. And if you're new to BCSD, you can always also go to YouTube and find us. We have a YouTube channel with a bunch of past concerts and events. If you want to get to know us a little better, you can go to our website, BachCollegiumSD.org. And in the meantime, I hope everybody can stay safe and healthy as we get through this very uncertain time. Thank you so much, Gary.
Great. Thanks, Ruben.
Take care.